Today I'd like to talk to you about the issue of peaking in A/B testing. Peaking is when you come to a conclusion about an A/B test when the results are not reliable enough. So let's look at this graph here for this test. We can see that the control and variant are performing quite similarly. However, at a certain point, the variant starts outperforming the control. Now, if we were to make a conclusion here that the variant is better than the control, this will not necessarily be reliable because the amount of data collected in the A/B test is not big enough to account for all the variance yet. And you can see here, as we gather more data, the control does indeed start to outperform the variant, but later on, the variant does start to perform much better. So the more data that you can gather in your test, the better and more reliable the result is. So one way to make sure the results are more reliable is to rely on our test summary interpretation at the top. Here you can see that there is a 97% confidence level in these results, which means that the uplift is quite high and we've gathered enough data to come to a more reliable conclusion about the test. There are two other scenarios for the test result summary. So we can see here that in this case, it tells us we need more time to gather more data. And in this case, the variant and the control actually do not have that much difference between them. So how do you decide when to actually pause your test and come to a conclusion? The truth is, you should always try to collect as much data as possible. Now, most A/B tests run between 2 to 8 weeks. So if you have a low website traffic, like let's say less than 10,000 users, you would want to lean on the higher end of that range, so between 6 to 8 weeks. If you have more than 10,000 users, or even several hundred thousand users, you can make a quicker result. However, it's always better to run the test for longer if possible. Now, how do you actually get more speed from your test? How do you actually come to a conclusion faster? Because velocity matters too. In this case, what you need to do is test big changes. Test page layouts, different content on the pages that can lead to higher uplifts on pages rather than testing, for example, button colors, which are more smaller changes. This is because if you gather more data, you'll be able to have more reliable results. The next thing you can do is to use metrics that have a higher conversion rate. So if you're an e-commerce site, instead of a purchase metric, you could instead use an add to cart metric. So this wouldn't be a highly accurate metric that will influence revenue, for example, but it does have a higher conversion rate and it results in having more data in the test, which would be a more reliable result. So to summarize, to speed up your test, use a metric that has a higher conversion rate, test bigger changes, and if you have lower traffic on your website, run the test for longer and use the test summary result interpretation available at the top of the test results page here. Thank you.